Welcome and thank you for joining us. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. How about learning that you can go face to face with someone and be able to ask for what it is that you want, no matter where you go in the world, or that you find yourself in situations where you feel that you're holding back and you just want to let loose and let everything inside of you out so somebody understands how you feel. Perhaps you're also someone who wants to go up to that boss that you've been looking for a raise for a long, long time. Or there's someone you see across the room that grabs your heart. You simply say to yourself, if I could only get up the courage to say what I feel right now to be able to connect, and perhaps we could walk out of the room together. On the program today, we're going to be talking about the very thing that sometimes many of us stumble with, and that is communication. Oh, sure, you say. Well, I'm able to talk. I'm able to express once in a while what it is that I need or that I want. But do you truly communicate what is inside of your heart and your spirit? Joining us here on the program today is a wonderful communication expert who's been able to do this very thing internationally. She also leads seminars, and she also creates what are known as sacred soul circles for women worldwide. Hopefully some men will be able to be sprinkled in there as well. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Noorah Hansen. Noorah, thank you for being on the program today.
Thank you for having me too, Daniel.
Communication now, how did all this start for you?
Well, a long time ago, when I was about 3 or 4, maybe 6 or 7, my family and I were traveling, and I just all of a sudden started telling people and asking people, mainly asking people, well, how old are you, and do you like your job, and why are you a forest ranger in places that we were camping? And funny, one time this one guy said, oh, I see why you keep her in the back of the truck, because it was like I was so open to understanding and wanting to know and curious to know what people were about. And through all my travels, I started traveling when I was 4 months old with my parents and family, and it just seemed a natural thing for me to be able to say or to ask more. Then as I grew older, I started feeling that I didn't have communication or good communication with my parents, and I just started it. I said, I would go to their home and I would say, what do I need to say? And how do I say this to them? And so they were my practicing ground for learning communication.
Now, were your teachers just as encouraging as your parents?
Well, as I must say no on that, because I was quite a talker, and because I was so inquisitive, teachers would say not now, later, and yet Mom and Dad, they wanted to know more about me a little bit. But sometimes I'd get, how do I say this? See, this is what we do in classes. When we can't quite find the words, we take a deep breath and we move into our bodies and move into breathing into our heart center. And then the words can automatically come. And so my folks would go, okay, what is it that you want to say to us? And then I'd say it. Sometimes it didn't quite come out the way I wanted it to. So then I would take another deep breath. And the breath would help me to slow down, to be able to hear what I was saying in my mind, to hear what I wanted to say, and then to think, well, how could I say it in a way that would be effective, that would be clear, that would be concise for them to understand. So basically, they were my practicing ground for about 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. And it just brought me into, well, I want to learn more. So I took some classes in conscious language, and that teacher, because I talked so fast, that teacher would say, no, you can't talk until you slow down. And he taught me how to teach others to slow down, listen to what I was saying, be present in my body. And that's basically what I help people with now.
Now, I'm kind of curious when it comes to communication. Do you think that that's probably one of the biggest areas people experience stress, or that can also cause what could be considered stress-related illnesses?
Yes, let's go with general stress first.
Okay.
Yes, let's say that you want a raise. In fact, this just happened with my niece recently. She really wanted a raise, and she knew that she deserved it. She knew that she had learned a lot more, and she's about 24 now. She learned a lot in her work. She'd been trained, and it was more to find her confidence inside. So it was teaching her how to talk to herself first. So if there's a thought like, oh, that my boss won't give it to me, or I really don't deserve it, or I'm not worthy of it, or whatever the words are, when we shifted the language inside herself and had her speak it over and over, she then had the courage to go to her boss, and her boss said yes. It was like, for her, it was like, oh my gosh, that's all I had to do was to feel confident in my body and to practice the words?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And then in regards to the stress of illness, what we tell ourselves is really what our subconscious takes as truth. If I tell myself every day I'm tired when I wake up, I will be tired.
Mm-hmm.
The subconscious is a part of us, subconscious mind, that is always running. Let's say it's always running. It doesn't sleep at night. It's the conscious mind that sleeps at night. If at night we put in a conscious statement saying, I wake up refreshed, I feel energized, and that's the last thing you put into your mind at night before you go to sleep, you will be helping the subconscious to give that to you when you wake up in the morning. And it can be very simple. It is simple, and sometimes remembering to know what is the right language that fits for me. And in speaking to others, what is the right wording for me to say? Mm-hmm. And that's when you get really clear when you breathe, slow down, contact your body, and relax.
Mm-hmm.
Then the words can come. And they can be effective. They can be your truth. And it doesn't mean you need to blast somebody with your anger. You can go and let go of your anger or let go of your fear or do that kind of process, which is a little different. I also show people how to do that. But it's not necessarily giving it to somebody in that way. It's more from a heartfelt place, and then the language is very effective. Your communication gets across to somebody, and they want to listen to you, rather than creating a defense between the two of you. Does that make sense to you?
Well, it does, because what I was thinking of, I remember there was a time, there was someone that I knew, and it was pretty obvious as this person was that kind of a person that could come into a room and you could almost feel, or just say you could feel the energy sort of go out the window from people. In other words, this was somebody that people just didn't enjoy being around too much. Mm-hmm. Now, not knowing this person like a lot of other people did, I had to ask, what's going on here? I see sort of that gaze that people have as this person enters the room, and it doesn't seem very favorable or friendly. Mm-hmm. And it was told to me, they tend to be someone who really likes to tell you what's on their mind. And there's no holds barred about the whole thing. So, one of those. Okay, I got you. So I decided to go up and just start a conversation with this person, and noticed that was exactly the thing, that this guy just would hold nothing back, and would be the kind of person that, just as you were talking about, for instance, being angry with someone, that he didn't have a problem telling you, I'm upset and these are my reasons why, but would go even further in the way of expressing it to make it personal. You know, as though he's really doing you a favor by letting you know these things.
Oh, yeah.
So really, it didn't, I think the best way to put it is, I wouldn't even say border, but was just had a sense of arrogance. So my first feeling about this is perhaps growing up somewhere along the way that he was hurt and just becoming bold enough to say to him, well, hey, you know, look, I can see that you feel like expressing to people what it is that's on your mind, but did you ever think about how you make other people feel? And almost spontaneously he says, why? Nobody ever cared how I felt. And so it was almost though instinctively it was nailed, and I thought, wow. And so you just kind of pry a little bit further, and not that I'm a psychologist or anything like that, but the fact is you get to the deep-rooted level, and I said, you know, I believe people respect you because they know where you're coming from. They always know where they are with you, but don't you think you make it a little further by sort of lashing out, even though maybe you don't mean to, in such a way that they just don't feel very good around you once you've done that? Is that really what your goal is here? And so, you know, that was kind of one of those things where maybe perhaps going to a workshop that you have can help people with that. Now, you know, that little story being shared there, Noorah, what are some of the common things that you encounter as you help people facilitate better, more, I guess, heartfelt communication? Because it's good to let people know how you're feeling. There's nothing wrong with that. But there are sometimes, I'm sure you've encountered people that just go too far.
Yes, that is true. And what I help people get in touch with if they are going too far is to have them tune into themselves and find what is it that they're feeling in the moment. Now, you say maybe he says in your example that he was angry and he needs to say all that. There's a time and a place for that, depending upon the relationship. Let's say you have a relationship, husband-wife, and the husband does something, let's say, or the wife does something, and it doesn't matter which example. And there's a feeling of dishonoring or disrespect. So what I would teach, let's say I would teach the wife, I have men and women in both of them in my communication classes. And let's just say she says, well, he just doesn't listen to me, and he doesn't hear me. All he does is blast me. Okay? Well, then I would say, okay, the example is he says, you just never do anything right. I'll use that as an example. And she can say, as what I call a contact statement, I hear that you don't think I do things right. And then she could say, what I'm feeling, though, is that I'm trying to do things right. And maybe there's a way that we need to talk about how what I do affects you and what you do affects me. This is a very broad subject the example that I just gave you. To be even more specific, it's like, I'm really angry because blah, blah, blah. All right? You can say that to yourself. Sometimes it's okay to say it depending upon the relationship. It's how you say it. It's like saying, instead of blaming, like, you made me feel this way, I help people to come back into their bodies and say, I feel this way when. All right? So there's an example of, I feel really sad when you ignore me. All right? As long as you're speaking about your feeling first, then you can say why you're feeling sad. It's not the other way first, meaning you. You make me mad, you make me sad, because that's not true. It seems as though it's the other person that makes us mad. Like in your example, Danielle, when that, and well, no one ever listened to me, we create these childhood patterns of communication, and then we can unlearn that type of communication and learn to drop in, take a breath. So everybody who's listening, just take a breath right now, drop in. And drop in means take a breath, move your energy into your heart center, have your attention there. And then once we're there, we really want to communicate clearly. And we want to be heard. To be heard, we also learn to be a deep listener. How to listen to somebody, even if they're like what you did, Danielle, in that example, where you went up to him and you said, well, have you ever thought about how your communication affects somebody else? So it's a mindfulness that we learn how to be present with ourselves, breathe, drop into our heart center. What would we really like to say? And it can be, I'm really feeling a bit angry right now, or I'm feeling a little scared, or I'm feeling guilty that this happened. I didn't mean for it to happen. If by chance something comes out of me, because I believe communication is a lifelong practice, if by chance a communication comes out and I notice that the other person is defensive, I will say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to create defensiveness here. What I really meant to say is I felt judged. I felt judged. Sometimes you can say only that and stop. And let the words land, so to speak, with the other person. I had this happen. I said, I feel judged. She says, oh, no, I'm not judging you. I said, well, I still feel judged. And I left it at that. Now, if I judged somebody and they felt that, and they said to me, I feel judged, what I would say is, I really get that you feel judged, and I didn't mean to judge you. What I really meant to say was, that takes mindfulness, Daniel. It takes mindfulness to drop in, not have a reaction, have a response to what someone says, notice where they are in their communication, because my goal in helping someone is that you feel comfortable in what the communication is and the other person feels comfortable. Sometimes we have to get a lot out of the way before we feel comfortable, and that's the practice.
Now, as a person who has become a communication expert, as you have, Noorah, I bet that you get to a point where you can really pinpoint personalities and good understandings of how people really are. And what do you have to say, for instance, and I know probably all of us have encountered or even know somebody like this, someone who talks, and they talk, and they talk, and they talk. You can't get a word in edgewise. And the other thing, too, is you don't really hear them saying very much. What's up with that? I mean, I know that most of my life, especially when I was a child, I was a chatterbox, and that was what people would tell me. And and the next, you can't even get a word in edgewise. And I realized that sometimes I could get pretty excitable about what I had to talk about, and boy, things would just roll out of my mouth. But I never felt, nor did I often hear people say that I lacked interesting things to say. But then there are those that just don't say anything, But boy, they've rattled off a lot of words that could fill several volumes of a dictionary.
Yes. Well, personally, what I would do, and it's only because I've been trained, is I would listen and I would watch what their body language, and I would look for a place to connect. Now, yes, they're going on and they're not saying too much. Eventually, I would say, excuse me just a minute. And I would see what they would do. Would they be able to say, would they be able to stop what they're talking about? Sometimes I bluntly say, what is the point of your communication? It's a little blunt. I say it from my heart, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's not in a condescending way or in a mean way. I'm looking for, how do I connect with this person? This person isn't connecting with me. They're just rattling off. I watch for eye contact. One of the things we practice in my classes is eye contact, not staring, yet being comfortable in your body to watch and to look at somebody. Now, if the person who's talking is not looking at me, I will stand and I will move my body to find that contact. Sometimes just by doing that, they realize, oh, I've been talking a lot. And if they stop and say, wow, I know I've been talking a lot, I might agree with them. I'll go yes. But is there a connection that you would like to have with me? Are we building a relationship, or what is it? There's somebody where I live who every time I see him, all he wants to do is talk about what's next that he's offering the community. Oh, I have this, I'm doing this. One time I stopped and I looked at him and I said, are you interested in having an actual conversation with me or a relationship in this way with a conversation? Because he would never say, and what's new for you? What's going on in your business? It was only about him. So what I noticed is, at first, I wanted to get away. I wanted to walk away from him and not even talk to him. That was my first response. Now, how many times has that happened to our listeners? They probably, I don't want to talk to him. I just want to get away, so you walk away.
Mm-hmm. The zip code's not big enough to sneak away from this individual.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Then what I do is I look at him and I go, I really get that you want me to hear what you have to say. Is that true? See, I don't assume that I know what he's thinking. I'm looking for a way to connect. When we look for a way to connect in communication, we're just building more love. We're building more connection. And how many times do we walk down the street and see somebody and they don't connect? And I'm not saying that 7 billion people need to connect all the time. In our life,
Few of us could use a good island to go sit on.
Yeah, exactly. Well, sometimes I remember when I was in Hong Kong, I was on this boat and we were going out to Lantau Island where this big Buddha was, and all the Chinese were there, and there were some Americans. I saw Americans, and so I was talking to them. But I was looking how to connect with other people. They wouldn't have eye contact. And I've always felt, personally, I don't expect others to feel this way, but I've always felt, where's our connection to everybody? How do we connect with who's in front of us? So then I just started connecting with different people at different times whenever I would travel. It's true, I can talk to anybody at any time, almost about anything, if they want to have eye contact or say hello. And it doesn't mean that we have to stare at each other every moment. I could be standing next to somebody having a conversation in line at the movie theater. Mm-hmm. Okay? The main thing that I'd like to convey, though, is what are you noticing in your body and what are you feeling when you are in communication with somebody? And the practice starts inside ourselves. Then as we're listening to what we're saying, we hear our words, we see how they are with other people, we notice that. We notice how they are talking to us and what we would like to communicate. Because basically it's really about relaxing and breathing. And then after that, you start to have a communication with your higher self. And then you can have a communication with all the inner teachers that are with you. So it really depends on what you specifically are going for. Mm-hmm. Yeah, what it is that what type of communication are you ready for in this moment? And in any moment, any type of communication can be learned in a way that makes you comfortable. And that's my whole goal.
Noorah, as you found that you've traveled the world, even though perhaps you don't speak all the different languages in the countries that you have visited, did you find that pretty much internationally that if you can just connect with body language, then you pretty much have a good feeling what other people are talking about?
Exactly. Very much so. In fact, most of our language is body language. It's not necessarily the word. It's how we are in our body. And I have been with people that have been nervous when in my presence. People that I haven't even known, different cultures, because I've traveled internationally. And what I would do is just relax, and I would have the feeling of how can I connect from my heart, even if I don't know their language. Now, I taught a group of Japanese that had a translator. I taught them for about an hour and a half the tools that I teach in a 6-hour class or in multiple day classes. And I understood what they were saying to each other, even though I don't know Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
I could feel into their bodies. I could see how they were relating. And then I would ask the question to see if I was correct, and the translator would say, yes, that's what they were saying. I think it takes tuning in and wanting to be in that connection with somebody.
Mm.
So if you do truly want to connect, you're choosing to be with somebody on some level that we could call a heart connection, why not do it with body language? Why not do it with a smile? People can smile at each other or look at each other, not say a thing, and you can still feel a connection. It's so heartwarming for me to have that, and then to show how others can relax, and then be able to. I had somebody in a class recently that would never look at somebody when she was speaking, and that was a childhood pattern of being very nervous in her family dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
I just asked her, I said, would you be able to look at me just a little bit when we're talking? And I said it very kindly because I knew she was nervous. So I dropped in and I said, okay, can you do that? And she said, well, I'm a little shy. And I said, okay, well, I'll just be here with you, and I'm not going to judge you for anything that you do. And that relaxed her.
Mm.
Then in the class, she even stood up and practiced looking at each person. She transformed right there. Mm-hmm. It was an amazing feeling for her that she could connect. And I would say about 50% of her shyness went away.
Mm.
Yes, and then another person, a man, stood up, and he became very tense, and his shoulders were rising up towards his ears. So I just said, well, could I just touch your shoulder for a moment? And I did. His whole body relaxed. He was able to look at everybody. And he walked away being able to talk to people, and he was very shy ahead of time. At the end of the 2-hour class, he was able to talk to people and be very open. Oh, and when that happens, I'm just so pleased, and I just feel so good, because here it almost brings tears to my eyes, because there's somebody that can relax and then connect. And what if we did connect with our families more, with our children in this way, with our friends, with our coworkers, with our bosses, somebody on the train? Yeah. What if we could do that? What would happen in the whole world?
Noorah, you bring up something that I know is probably the greatest fear in people, obviously, because a survey was taken that people would rather die than talk in front of other people.
Mm-hmm.
So public communication and public speaking, obviously, is one of the biggest fears people have. What I noticed is that I've actually suggested this to people, and it sounds like you've done the same thing in your workshops. For me, I love the crowds. The bigger they are, the better, it seems like. And I was talking with an individual the other day just about this very thing. And they said, I go up and I do pretty good talks, but I'd like to be better. And I asked, well, what is it about what you have to say that really doesn't make you feel like you're really that engaging of a speaker or that interesting? And I think they were saying because sometimes it's just I get up there and there's the butterflies and I feel like there's a wall that separates me between the audience. And I said, well, there you go, right there. That's probably something to consider. I said, years ago, it was just an experiment that I tried, even though I didn't mind talking in front of people, but I still felt that nervous barrier that was being described. And what I said is here's what you do. It's just a suggestion, and you said this earlier, first of all, is that you take a nice deep breath, let it out, and find yourself present right there in the moment. Then the next thing that you do is you look at someone eye to eye, see that they look at you back, and then you smile so you make a connection with them. Then begin your speech just as you're about ready to talk with them one-on-one. That would make you feel comfortable, wouldn't it?
Exactly.
And they thought yes, and I said, now as you continue to do your speech, you begin to scan the room and you do the same thing. You connect with someone else and someone else and so forth and so on. Because you notice a lot of times how people tend to, and we can't blame the president for doing this because he's looking at teleprompters, and he's certainly not scanning the room, but there are those moments you know that he's making a connection with people in the audience. But the fact is, you'll see a lot of people, they'll look to the back and they'll look over, just act like people aren't there. Now, what I noticed about this particular experience was this. You become a more interesting person, for people to listen to. That doesn't mean that what you're saying is all that much more interesting than someone else. In fact, it could even be worse. But I think that you just become a greater speaker just based on that. And I've watched, I could be in front of 2,000 or 3,000 people, them reduced to just like seemingly a group of 3, 4, or 5. Now, certainly, many of us have heard the Brady Bunch way of doing this, which is pretend everybody is in their underwear.
Oh, yes.
Now, unequivocally, I've been in a situation, and this is a fact, where I've spoke to an audience of people that didn't have any clothes on. Now, try that one on for size. But do you notice that that's one of the suggestions that perhaps you share with people? I mean, because you talked about the eye connection, and I thought that's also something that I think could be valuable if you have a real problem in public speaking.
Yes, it's very true. I haven't told people to look at everybody as though they're naked, though. That one I haven't
well,
done.
no, these people actually were, though.
Oh, I see.
That's the difference.
Oh, I see.
I don't ever have to picture them in their underwear. They were actually naked, but
oh, I see.
Anyway.
That's very funny, yes. Yes, it's talking to one person at a time. Even on the radio, and where we're not in person with somebody, we are personable. And what I like to do is exactly what you do. Talk to one person, make that eye contact, talk to another person, and absolutely, the first step is to be present with yourself. Mm-hmm. I remember watching a speaker once. He came out, and he sat there for 1 minute, maybe 1.5 minutes, maybe even 2 minutes before he said anything. And I noticed the audience was getting a little nervous, like, is he ever going to talk? Or lots of different thoughts came up. And someone asked him, well, why do you take so long? And he said, well, I'm waiting to know what I'm going to say. So I'm staying present until I know what I'm going to say. And that it's the silence that helps us even to connect. Only people are afraid of silence sometimes. They want to jump in with their story. Let's say I have a story or I'm talking and someone wants to jump in right away, and it's like they didn't hear what I had to say and they wanted to tell their story. So they're thinking in their mind about their story even before I'm done talking, or even vice versa. So it's like, how can we listen fully to what someone is saying and make a contact like, wow, I really enjoyed hearing that, rather than tagging on another story immediately. Yet it is about being present, one person at a time. It's like taking your child and having your eyes look at your child's eyes before you speak. Or if someone's in front of the television, you have their attention before you start to say something. I know people talk to their partners when they're watching TV or watching sports or watching anything, and then they don't feel heard. Well, it's the connection first, and then speak. So it can be 2,000 people, it can be 100 people, it can be 6 people, it can be one person. And it's all the same. Become present in your body, take a breath, then speak. Make that connection, and then speak. So that's the I would say the bottom line for communication.
Now, is it true, we hear this all the time, that men and women communicate differently?
Oh, yes. Yes, they do. I've taken classes on how to communicate to men and what helps them, and what helps them is for the women to get to the point. I remember being on the call with my brother and sister-in-law, and I had something that I was really nervous about saying to them. And so I was fumbling, and I didn't quite know how to get it out, and I was still working at it. And my brother says, "Would you get to the point?" And I said, "I am. Please be patient." And there was an example. If women can learn how to be succinct and to the point with their men, or with any communication with men, and get to the point, you will stay connected to them. Sometimes, as a woman, we go on and on and on and on. That's not for the men. It's for our girlfriends, really, to learn how, because we can talk, have all different conversations going on at one time, and come back and resolve one conversation and go to another and that's easy for some of us. And I'm not saying, this is general, there's differences for each. I have a friend who likes to talk, a male friend who likes to talk more than I do. Okay, so there are differences in each person. I have learned, though, the best thing, get to the point with what you would like, appreciate the person, the man, for what he does, because they like the word appreciation. At least that's what I was told. So I practice it and see if it's true. What words are good for each other, and how can we stay in connection and honor each other and tell our truth and say what we mean in an authentic way. That's about it, yeah.
So another way to look at it, too, would be that men want people to get to the point, and women want to know how other people feel. Would that make sense?
That makes sense.
Okay.
Yes.
And so, therefore, women tend to want to talk a little bit more until they get to the point because they're trying to express what that point is making them feel.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and when we know what we're feeling, we even would like to know what the man is feeling. If he can't say what he's feeling, I always ask him what they're thinking. So what are you thinking? I said that to one of my partners once, and he said, well, I feel kind of frustrated. But if I said, what are you feeling, he would say, I don't know. And I think that what we're learning is how to have that balance of men can learn how to talk to women, women can learn how to talk to men, and there can be a balance in understanding each other and not making each other wrong for the type of communication that we would like. Mm-hmm. It's a very deep subject, and I call it the art of communication. Okay, how do we practice each day to be with someone and communicate in a way that we stay connected? How do we do that? And it is a practice. And I love practicing it. That's why I keep teaching it.
Do you ever have people, Noorah, who come to you who are in the sales industry that want to improve the way that they, I guess, communicate with people to increase their sales?
Yes. I teach them how to have body rapport.
Ah, okay.
Okay. Let's say a salesperson is very enthusiastic and just loves the product and pops into an office, and the person that he's talking to is, just kind of slow and has a different rhythm, okay? If he doesn't know that, or he or she, the salesperson, doesn't know how to read the body or how to read the rhythm of the other person and just talks over the person, they're not going to get through. they're not going to make a sale. It's to drop in and have the same body rapport. It's like when my mom had dementia for the last 2 years of her life, she would always lean to the left in her chair. So when I was with her, I would lean to the right because I was facing her. She'd have this big smile on her face. I just matched her body language. So if a salesperson is coming in and notices that someone is the same energy as person, the salesperson, then you can have a good rapport. Sometimes you need to slow down. I had someone come to my door wanting to sell cable TV, and she was really fast. She wasn't paying attention to what I was saying. I was saying, I don't watch TV. I said that once. She kept on her sales spiel.
Look, if you don't want me as a customer, just turn around and walk away.
Well, it was so...
Well, no, the point being is I think, wouldn't you agree possibly that she's rushing through this because she just wants to get over the fact that she might get rejected anyway?
Exactly. And she was nervous. So afterwards, I said to her, I said, wait. Slow down. Please slow down. I have said twice to you that I don't watch TV, and you keep talking. So you have not heard what I've said. She said, oh, I'm so sorry. And I said, listen, when you come up to a house, just be aware of how the other person is speaking, and you will make a sale. It's okay. It's okay to want to make a sale. And if you're breathing, so I just gave her a little mini workshop in 5 minutes.
There you go.
She walked away so happy, and she said, thank you so much. I said, you're completely welcome. Make sure people watch TV. There's people that don't watch TV. Okay? Like me. I don't watch TV. I get all the information I need on the computer. So it's like in showing somebody that she was so happy, and that made me happy. Mm-hmm. I didn't make her wrong. That was the main thing. I just said, wait. I've said twice. Okay? I want you to listen to me. I'm listening to you. I think you have a great product, and I think it's really useful for others. And I really like that you came to talk to me. So I'll acknowledge them, and I'll also tell them they're doing a good job, because they are. It just may not be for me, but somebody, the next person, maybe she could make a sale. Because I would like everybody to have a win-win situation in their communication and in their sales. Sure, why not?
Mm.
Yeah.
I know when speaking of sales and this cable television lady that you had an encounter with, especially when people in midlife, you see this fairly often as they supplement their incomes by going into network marketing companies. Multi-level marketing is another way it could be called. And, there's some people who are really good at this, and then there's some people, they become frustrated and they just quit. And I think what I have noticed, now maybe it's the product or the service, but really it requires you to have a whole different skill set than you're used to having. And one of the biggest things that I usually hear is, well, this is sales. Okay, well, I guess that could be a way to look at it. But here's what I've encountered from time to time for people, and as you said, you held a little mini workshop there on your porch, is that a lot of times, just like this lady here, they just come up and they just spew a bunch of information and enthusiasm about this newly found thing that they're involved with. And not once do they ever ask you if this is something you need or is this something that you're interested in.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that a little bit.
Well, I would say that's not the way to do it. Okay? First, it's to have your connection with the product or the service that you're selling, that you embody it. Okay, so that the internet marketer or the multi-level marketing, if you're embodying the products, let's say, and that in itself would be a testimonial for another person to perhaps try this product. The first thing you have to do, though, is find that connection. before you do your enthusiastic sales pitch. I've had people come up to me and just start rattling, and I said, not right now. And they said, when? And one person, I said, well, call me in 2 years. Because that's all that he would do is want to do that without the connection. If you don't have a relationship first, how can you sell something?
Right.
So it's really relational.
Because people only buy from people that they know and feel comfortable with, usually.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
If your presence is in relationship with their presence, you could put it that way. I know someone calls it relational presence. How do you work in that field before you even make a sale? What's the relationship that you want before you have an agenda with the person? How do you create the relationship first? One person called me once, hey, Noorah, I'd like to come over to your house and talk to you. Okay, she didn't say what it was, and I knew immediately it was about something multi-level.
You can always tell because it's the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah. So she came over, and we were talking, how are you doing, what's going on in your life, and I wanted to say in that moment, get to the point. Mm-hmm. Eventually she said, well, I have that product that I really think is good for you, and without even asking me what's going on in my life where I might connect with the product. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I gave her feedback also, and people know that I do give them feedback, and I do it kindly and honestly. And I said, okay, what would really have worked for me is for you to say on the phone, Noorah, I want to talk to you about this product. May I come over and talk to you? Now, because she's a friend and it was a new business for her, I would have said, yes, absolutely, come over. And I would have listened, and then I would have even helped them with their communication, because people know that that's what I do here in my town. And so if she had done that, okay, right from the very beginning, I would have felt honored. All right? In this way, I didn't tell her she dishonored me or whatever, and I didn't even have to go there with my feelings. It was mainly, how could I support you? That's what I felt I wanted to do. So in different circumstances, it's to be honest with the person in a very kind and effective way. Actually, I'm not interested in that product. And if it's a good multi-level marketer, they'll say, okay, great. Would you like me to talk to you later about it? Yeah. People call me for, like, organic consumers. They call and they want me to donate. I say, not right now, but it's okay to call me in 5 months or 3 months or 2 months. See, so it's a matter of being honest so that people get, oh, I get you. I get what's going on with you. And that's kind of slang, I get you. Yet it's what we do. We get somebody if they're honest with us. What I tell people is, if you're honest in your communication with me, I can take anything. If you tell me that, hey, what you just said, I really felt, I didn't feel very good with that, or I felt embarrassed, and then I can apologize, or I can look at a different way of saying it, or it's honoring each other is the main thing. Yeah, I really hear what you're saying. And I get that right now you're really upset. That's okay. And then have a pause. Yeah, and then go on with the communication. Definitely is a vast subject, huh, Danielle?
Well, it can be, but really the thing is, as I was mentioning at the beginning of the program, we're all seeking to get really what we want, whether it's love, whether it's approval, or in the case of your friend, a potential customer for a great product that they encountered, and so on. I mean, that's a lot of what communication is. And then I also understand, too, that communication is about us just really navigating our world, and it's almost like a submarine pinging a sonar to figure out just where you're at in life, where you are. Does that make sense?
Yes. I would say the first step is mindfulness with yourself. That's step number one. When we're mindful of where we are, what we'd like to say, and then we practice it. When I was first practicing conscious language, which is basically stating what's really true for me, stating it from a place that, from the place of personal, like I, my, stating it that way, and stating it specifically. It took a while. Something would come out years ago, something 20 years ago, someone would come out and I'd say, wait a minute, that's the old Noorah. What I'd like to say now is, and I'd become present, mindful, what is it that I'd really like to say? It's okay to pause and think about it and then say it. And people were saying, do you have to do that? I go, yes, because I'm retraining myself to listen to what I'm saying so I don't just blurt. Because I used to blurt, and I'd see somebody, they'd kind of be fuzzy in their eyes, and I'd go, what did I just say? If I'm not conscious of what I'm saying, how do I know how that's going to affect somebody else? Mm-hmm. And so it's really a personal goal to be effective and to be in connection with somebody. And if that is your goal, then practicing the communication really is helpful.
Oh, very good. For those of you just tuning in, we're talking about better communication, which I'm sure that we could all use to find out how we can navigate our world and also get what we want while also helping others to be able to do the same as well. Noorah joining us here on the program. Now, Noorah, I have someone here who has e-chatted me a question, and I know that we've touched on this, but what would you say is the best way to communicate without saying anything?
That's a great question. All right.
Comes from a reverend, so you better watch out.
Okay, the best way to communicate without saying a word, is that what the question is? Without saying anything, right?
Right.
Okay. Take a breath. Take all the energy that's in the mind that wants to talk and drop into your heart. Communicate from a loving place of where you love yourself and that you're choosing to love the presence of the other person, regardless of what they look like, regardless of what they may be saying, is that you connect with the presence, with the being that's inside the human body. And I would stand still and be, with a capital B-E. That's how I would do it.
And there's your radio pause that you're looking for.
Yes, exactly.
Always a wonderful subject, especially being in radio. I mean, communication is something that we do. Mm-hmm. Noorah, if you could, for our listeners, is there a place people can find out more about you, whether it's online or a way to connect with your workshops?
Yes, I have a website that is, of course, the 3 W's, and then it's Earth, E-A-R-T-H, Spirit, S-P-I-R-I-T, services with an S.com /Portland.
Oh,
and
okay.
That's my whole website, but Portland will give the reader or the listener something to look at as to what I'm teaching in June in Portland. And
that's one with Ascending Masters?
That's one of my websites.
Oh, that's one of your websites.
Yeah,
okay.
The other one is earthspiritservices.com.
Earthspiritservices.com. Okay.
Yeah, /Portland.
Okay.
And that's one, and the other one is one with ascendedmasters.com. I have 2 websites, and I do lots of different teachings with both of them, but you can take a look and see who I am there. Thank you so much, Danny.
Yeah, there was one thing I wanted to kind of leave our listeners with today, and I wanted your thoughts on this as well, Noorah. It was something I read, and the more that I thought about this, the more I realized, at least for me anyway, that there was a lot of inherent truth in this, especially when it comes to meeting new people that really don't know you that well. And it was a piece of advice that was given that if you want to become a more interesting person, especially a very likable person, and that was that what you do is that you ask at least 6 questions, minimally, that have to do with the other person themselves before you say anything about who you are. And you don't really tell that other person anything about yourself until they ask, at least until you get through the 6 questions. It doesn't matter what the questions are, it's that you ask at least 6 questions that are about them first before you say anything about you. Mm-hmm. What do you think about something like that?
That's what I do. I think it's perfect. What I do is I put on my curiosity hat, because I am so curious about how did this person become who they are at this age, whatever age they are. Mm-hmm. So I do ask a lot of questions if they're open to that. Some people think that's nosy to ask all these questions, but I ask general questions, like if I'm sitting next to somebody on the plane or something like that. Or once I was with a child on the plane. She'd never been on the plane before, and I just kept talking to her and helped her feel the power of the plane as it was flying, as we were lifting up and things like that. But I absolutely believe that if you are curious about somebody, you're going to make a connection. Mm-hmm. If you ask about them first, rather than have to talk about yourself. And the key word here is have to. Because we don't have to talk about ourselves. We can be in our presence and be curious about them. And then something that they say, we will relate to, almost always. Mm-hmm. And I've, in fact, been on a plane where I've only that other person talked to me about, and I kept asking questions. It was all about them. And when the flight was over, the person said, wow, you are such an interesting person. I'm really glad that we had this conversation.
Isn't that funny?
Isn't that funny? I said, well, thank you. It was an interesting conversation.
It sure was.
And then they say, could I have your card? And I go, yes, here.
There you go.
That's great.
Now, Noorah, go ahead for our listeners and give out that website one more time.
Okay. It is Earth, EARTH, Spirit, SPIRIT, services with an S.com/Portland.
Okay. Earth Spirit Services /Portland.com is where you'll find out how to be better at communicating, and you'll find yourself probably feeling a whole lot better in the world because you've connected with everyone in it as well as with yourself. Noorah, thank you so much for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program.
Thank you very much, Danielle. I had a good time.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for tuning in and your wonderful questions for Noorah there. If you want to find out more, visit us online at beyond50radio.blogspot.com, as we're still getting our new website up and running. That is the number 50, and you can also type in beyond50radio.com if you want to as well. We do have a free weekly e-newsletter that you can sign up for as well. We want to thank all of you for tuning in today and joining us. I'm Daniel Davis. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.